What if the reason you're exhausted isn't because you're doing too little, but because you're forcing too much? Trying to control people, forcing plans to work, pushing emotions down just to keep functioning. Somewhere along the way, you started believing that peace is something you have to chase, instead of something you can allow. But the ancient Stoics taught the opposite. They believed that forcing life is what fractures the soul, that stillness is not laziness, it's intelligence, and that when you stop gripping so hard, life has room to unfold in ways you never expected. In this video, you'll learn 10 powerful Stoic lessons that will help you stop forcing, start flowing, and finally reclaim your peace of mind, without needing to fix everything first. Some of these ideas will challenge you. Others will feel like long-lost truths you've always known. But by the end, you won't just understand peace, you'll know how to live it. Stay with me till the last lesson, because that's where everything clicks. Most people are addicted to action. They think that if they're not pushing, pulling, or hustling, they're losing. But here's the twist. The Stoics believe that stillness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When you force things, you often make them worse. You rush into relationships, chase opportunities that aren't ready, or try to control outcomes that aren't yours to control. Life, like nature, has its seasons. And no matter how hard you push, winter won't turn into spring just because you're impatient. Ever tried to open a tightly sealed jar? The more you twist in frustration, the more your hand slips. The same happens in life. When you press too hard on the wrong door, it doesn't open, it breaks. Or worse, it opens to something you aren't ready for. The Stoics remind us that what's meant for you will align with effort, not strain. They taught that our job isn't to force life to cooperate, but to cooperate with life as it unfolds. That's not passive, it's powerful. Because it takes real strength to be still when everything in you wants to act. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right thing, at the right time, for the right reason, and letting go of the outcome. Marcus Aurelius sat on the Roman throne, surrounded by chaos, yet he found clarity in stillness. Why? Because when the mind is calm, decisions become clear. When the heart is patient, timing becomes your ally. When you stop forcing, you start flowing. And that's when real progress sneaks in. Quiet, steady, and sustainable. So the next time you're tempted to force an answer, rush a result, or chase something slipping away, pause. Ask yourself, is this flow or force? Are you aligning with life, or trying to manhandle it into submission? That question alone can shift your path. And speaking of alignment, there's a paradox in control that most people never see coming. The more you try to control everything, the more out of control you feel. It's one of the cruelest jokes life plays on us. You hold tighter, plan harder, obsess deeper, and yet, things still fall apart. The Stoics knew this well. They taught that control is not about dominating the world, it's about mastering your response to it. Epictetus said it simply, some things are up to us, and some things are not. Peace begins the moment you accept that distinction. Not just mentally, but emotionally. Most of your anxiety comes from wrestling with things that were never yours to carry. Other people's opinions, the timing of events, the outcomes of your efforts. You can influence, but you can't dictate. And that gap between influence and control is where all your frustration lives. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means redirecting your energy from things you can't control to the one thing you always can. Your mindset. That's where real power lives. Think of it like sailing. You can't control the wind, only your sail. If you fight the wind, you'll get nowhere. But if you adjust, you move forward. That's the Stoic path. When you stop trying to bend the world to your will, you start working with it. You notice patterns. You recognize signs. You move with more grace and less resistance. And here's the paradox. Once you stop obsessing over results, they start showing up. Not because you force them, but because you stop sabotaging them. When you let go, you make space. And in that space, better things tend to arrive. Things you never could have predicted, but somehow needed. Which brings us to a deeper fear. The fear of being late in life, of missing out, of falling behind. It's easy to feel behind these days. Social media shows you highlight reels of people your age, or younger, who seem to have it all. The job, the partner, the house, the fame. And you're still figuring things out. But here's what the Stoics would say. Nothing natural happens too soon or too late. You're not late. You're on your own path. And comparing timelines is like comparing trees in a forest. Each one grows in its own season. The pressure to have it all together by a certain age is one of the most damaging lies of modern life. It turns living into a race, and worst of all, a race with no finish line. Marcus Aurelius didn't become emperor at 20. Seneca didn't write his greatest works until later in life. Epictetus was born a slave. None of them followed a timeline. They followed principles. And those principles, patience, discipline, clarity, are timeless. There's a kind of inner peace that comes when you stop sprinting and start trusting. Trusting that your life doesn't need to match anyone else's. Trusting that delays are not denials, they're preparation. Trusting that the time you lost might have been time you needed to grow roots. Because when the fruit is ready, it shows up fast. But it only grows if you've done the work underground, in the dark, where no one claps for you. So the next time you feel like you're behind, remember, the only thing that truly matters is who you're becoming, not when you get there. Slow growth is real growth. And sometimes, the slowest blooms are the most resilient. But to bloom, you need to stop gripping so tightly to desires that are making you anxious. Which leads us to the next lesson. Desire feels like fuel, until it burns you. Wanting something too much, a relationship, a goal, a lifestyle, often clouds your judgment. You start chasing fantasies, ignoring red flags, and sacrificing your peace for a future that may never come. The Stoics warned us, uncontrolled desire is a form of slavery. When you need something to feel whole, you've handed your power to it. And the cruel part? The more you chase, the further it runs. Look at advertising. It thrives on making you feel incomplete. You're always one purchase away, one achievement away, one step closer to being enough. But what if you flipped that script? What if you stopped asking, what else do I need? And started asking, what can I live without? That shift changes everything. You stop being a consumer of life and start becoming a curator. You choose. You simplify. You breathe. Seneca wrote that wealth is not about having more, but needing less. When you can walk away from what doesn't serve you, even if it looks tempting, you become untouchable. That's not apathy. It's clarity. It's the strength to look at something shiny and say, no thanks, I'm already full. You'll be shocked how many things lose their power when you stop craving them. And how many distractions vanish when you don't need to be entertained all the time. Freedom isn't having everything. It's not needing everything. And the ironic twist? Once you stop obsessing over what you don't have, you start seeing the richness of what you do. But even with this clarity, there's still one thing most people can't seem to let go of, and it's something that haunts them long after it ends. One of the most exhausting things you can do is keep replaying a moment, a conversation, or a betrayal, hoping it will finally make sense. But here's the reality. Some things in life won't give you closure. Not because you didn't deserve it, but because the people involved were never capable of giving it. The Stoics would tell you, stop demanding explanations from chaos. Accept the silence. That's where your peace begins. We crave closure because we believe it will bring emotional resolution. But more often than not, it just reopens the wound. You get stuck in mental loops. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? Why didn't they care? And yet, answers rarely bring relief. Because what you're really looking for is justice, not information. And justice, especially in human relationships, doesn't always come wrapped in logic. Imagine carrying a locked box you'll never open, because the key doesn't exist. That's what chasing closure feels like. And here's the truth. You don't need closure to heal. You need acceptance. That doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means you've decided not to let it own you anymore. You rewrite the story, not by changing the past, but by choosing what it means now. And once you stop chasing explanations, your energy returns. You sleep better. You stop checking your phone, replaying the argument, waiting for the apology that won't come. You get your time back, your focus, your dignity. But here's the catch. Letting go doesn't mean detaching from life. It means learning how to release without becoming numb. And that's where most people get it wrong. A lot of people think detachment means apathy. like you stop caring, stop feeling, stop showing up. But that's not what the Stoics meant at all. True detachment isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about staying grounded, even when things don't go your way. It's the ability to love without clinging, to engage without expecting, and to walk away without collapsing. It's not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of control. Picture a surgeon. They care deeply about saving lives, but they can't panic when things go wrong. Their hands have to stay steady, even when their heart is racing. That's Stoic detachment. It's emotional discipline, not emotional avoidance. When you detach properly, you can actually show up more powerfully. You listen better, speak clearer, and choose more wisely. You're no longer reacting, you're responding. Big difference. Now here's the trap. When you don't understand detachment, you swing too far. You disconnect completely. You ghost, numb out, or pretend nothing matters. But that's just fear wearing a mask. Real detachment is brave. It keeps your heart open but your hands free. You're willing to feel the full depth of life, joy, loss, love, disappointment, without being owned by any of it. You become like water, soft but unstoppable. So don't confuse shutting down with letting go. One is a defense mechanism. The other is a power move. And when you master that, you stop trying to control the world, and start controlling yourself. Which is exactly where the Stoics believed all your strength should live. But how do you hold on to that strength when the world keeps testing you? You can't stop the storm, but you can train yourself not to collapse in the rain. That's the heart of Stoic wisdom. The world is unpredictable. People disappoint, plans fall apart, and life throws curveballs when you least expect. But here's the thing. The Stoics never promised you a perfect world. They promised you something better. The power to respond with clarity, no matter what the world does. That's control. And it's the only kind that truly matters. Most people waste their energy trying to control everything outside of them. Traffic, emails, arguments, outcomes. It's like trying to straighten the wind with your hands. Frustrating, pointless. But shift that energy inward, and everything changes. You start asking better questions. What's my role in this? What can I do right now that aligns with my values? That shift alone can turn chaos into clarity. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. You could scream, stew, let it ruin your whole day, or you could breathe and let it pass. Not because you're passive, but because you refuse to hand over your emotional state to a stranger. That's power. Real power. Not loud, not flashy, but deeply rooted. You stop being a puppet pulled by every external string and start becoming the calm center of the storm. And once you feel that calm, you'll notice something interesting. Some battles just don't seem worth it anymore. Some arguments no longer tempt you. Some situations no longer feel like emergencies. And that opens the door to one of the most difficult, but liberating, decisions you'll ever make. Most people think walking away means weakness. Like you've lost. Like you gave up. But sometimes, walking away is the most powerful move you can make, not because you're quitting, but because you're finally choosing yourself. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that the wise person doesn't cling to what no longer serves their peace. They recognize when a situation has become a cage, and they step out with dignity. It takes courage to stay, yes, but it also takes courage to leave. To leave a job that drains your soul. To walk away from a person who doesn't see your worth. To close a chapter, even when you don't know what the next one holds. Surrender isn't about defeat, it's about alignment. It's looking at your life and asking, is this helping me become who I want to be? Think of a general on the battlefield. They don't keep fighting a war they've already lost just to prove a point. They retreat, regroup, and live to fight another day. That's wisdom. But in modern life, we confuse staying with strength, even if it's killing us inside. We hang on for appearances, for fear of judgment, or because we think we should. But the truth is, strength is not about endurance alone. It's about discernment. And once you reclaim that discernment, you stop fighting every current. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to win at all costs. You choose your peace over your pride. And ironically, that surrender brings you back to power. The kind that doesn't need validation. But be careful, slowing down isn't the same as giving up. In fact, it's often the beginning of your greatest healing. In a world obsessed with hustle, rest looks suspicious. If you're not constantly grinding, people assume you're lazy or lost. But the Stoics would say the opposite. Stillness is not stagnation, it's strategy. There's a kind of sacred pause that renews your clarity, your energy, your direction. You're not falling behind when you stop. You're realigning. You're shedding noise. And sometimes, the most productive thing you can do is nothing. Think about nature. Trees don't bloom all year. Bears hibernate. Oceans have tides. Everything wise and natural moves in rhythms, expand, then retreat. But we treat ourselves like machines, running on deadlines and caffeine, wondering why we feel empty. The Stoics remind us, you're not a tool. You're a soul. And the soul doesn't thrive on constant motion. It grows in silence, in reflection, in intentional slowness. Letting yourself rest isn't weakness, it's trust. It's trusting that your value doesn't come from output alone, that your worth doesn't need to be constantly proven. When you slow down, something beautiful happens. Your senses wake up. You start noticing things you were too busy to feel. You remember what matters. You stop reacting and start choosing. And once you taste that stillness, you'll want more of it. Not to escape the world, but to engage it better. Because you realize you were never meant to force your way through life. You were meant to flow through it, with wisdom. And that flow begins when you let things unfold on their own terms. There's a certain magic in letting things unfold. Not because you're passive, but because you finally understand the limits of your control. The Stoics weren't detached from life. They were deeply engaged. But they knew how to wait. They knew that some answers arrive only after silence. Some paths appear only when you stop chasing them. There's a power in patience that no amount of force can match. When you allow life to unfold, you move from desperation to observation. You start seeing the signs you used to miss. The opportunities that seemed to hide from you begin to show up. Not because life changed, but because you did. You stopped gripping. You opened your hands. And that openness created space for something new. Look at relationships. The ones that grow strongest are rarely rushed. They evolve slowly, through presence, trust, and time. Or look at creative work. Forcing ideas usually leads to burnout, while space allows inspiration to breathe. When you stop pressing life like a gas pedal, you begin to feel its rhythm. And in that rhythm, peace becomes your default. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer resisting what is. So here's the real victory. Not in controlling life, but in dancing with it. Not in having every answer, but in trusting the questions. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate. It means you don't just accept what happens. You welcome it. You meet each moment like an old friend, not an enemy. And when you live that way, life softens. It stops feeling like a fight, and starts feeling like a flow. You've been taught that effort equals success, that if something's not working, you just need to try harder, push more, fight longer. But what if true strength is in the opposite direction? What if the greatest breakthroughs don't come from forcing life, but from releasing your grip on it? The Stoics weren't against effort, they were against wasted effort, the kind that burns you out, hijacks your peace, and distracts you from what actually matters, your character, your clarity, your calm. Now the question is yours to answer. What are you still forcing? That maybe, just maybe, it's time to release. Because when you stop forcing what doesn't fit, you create space for what does. And in that space, you find yourself again. If this message spoke to you, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. We're building a community here around timeless wisdom for a modern world. And if you want more videos like this, drop a comment below. What's one thing you're ready to stop forcing? Your peace is closer than you think. Let's walk that path, together.